I got involved in nuclear weapons effects, because back in the early 1980s, Ronald Reagan was out there with Strategic Defense Initiative. No, thank you, I don't want to know more. And when you're in the government, this is working in the federal government, it's extremely political. We went ahead, developed a prototype. Within a year, I had a product out. We won all sorts of awards. SPIE, we were nominated for, that's the Oscar of photonics. We won the Consumer Electronics Show Award for most innovative.
Welcome to The Growth Switch, the podcast where we explore the strategies, struggles, and breakthroughs of bold business leaders. I'm your host, Jules Fox, growth strategist and lead content creator at Aries Media. I'm here to uncover how today's top brands are scaling, overcoming challenges, and unlocking sustainable success. Now, for those of you just tuning in, Aries Media helps grow successful brands with comprehensive, hands-on support for sales, business development, and performance marketing. Go ahead and drop growth into the comments if you want to learn how to do that. Today, we have a phenomenal guest. We have John Serri on the podcast. He is a physicist, scientist turned founder and CEO of EyeQue, and he's going to talk about what really goes on in building a disruptive healthcare tech company, especially when you didn't even mean to start one. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jules. Pleasure to meet you, and thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to have you on the podcast. So we probably could do an entire podcast just on your backstory, but I would love to hear a little bit of it. Where did you start your career? And how did it end up getting towards where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, that could take a bit of a while. When I was 3 years old and 4 years old, I was fascinated by science. But let's jump 20 some odd years. So I was studying physics. I loved mathematics, physics, chemistry. I went to MIT for my graduate studies. I got my PhD there. I was in research, did atomic physics. So that's not nuclear physics, that's atomic physics. That's the study of atoms and molecules. It's lower energy. Did that. Then I went on to Bell Laboratories, which a long time ago in the 1980s was a very famous industrial lab, because I grew up as a poor kid. So, I didn't have a parents bankrolling me with money. In fact, there was none of that. So I said, I need to do something like build a career. I wanted to own a house and that sort of stuff. So I decided to go into industry. And also I did that because in my heart, I'm a generalist. To do really, really great research, you need to be a specialist. You need to dive into a subject deeper than anybody has dived in before. And then there's about 10 people in the world who appreciate how deeply you dived and go on and so forth. Well, I did that as a PhD and a postdoc, but I said, it's time to broaden out and let's, see if I can help the world. And it was always like that. Let's, help myself, help my family, but also what can I do to help organizations? What can I do to help the world? So I ended up in doing things in AT&T, which was part of Bell Laboratories. I got involved in nuclear weapons effects, because back in the early 1980s, Ronald Reagan was out there with Strategic Defense Initiative. And it just blew away the Soviet Union because so much resources was put into this area. Well, AT&T was one little part of that. I was looking at the effects of high-altitude electromagnetic pulses. If you detonate a weapon at high altitude, it gives off a bunch of nasty stuff, gamma rays, and they form a big electrical pulse, knocks out equipment. You knock out equipment, you knock out the network, you knock out the network, you knock out your defense system. So I got involved in that. But with time, I was good at this stuff. So I was like, I saw myself as a leader. I would talk to people. I'd be in the government. I'd give talks, and they would keep throwing money at me, which was.
Yeah.
And then I started to get involved more in general, not just nuclear weapons, more in government security and stuff like that. So I got very much involved with the government. In fact, I got too involved. So it got to the point where they said, John, you want to know more? I go, no, thank you. I don't want to know more. And when you're in the government, this is working in the federal government, it's extremely political. Even at my level, which was not at, a senior executive at that point in time, but it was at a level where there was always uncertainty and there was a quest to look good with the minimal amount of effort. And I'm not good at that. I tend to look bad with a lot of effort. So I was not a good fit for the government world. So I said, no, I need to get back to science and technology. And so I got out to the West Coast. And that was about 35 years ago, built a satellite system called GlobalStar. I was one of the founders of that program, when we launched, ended up launching about 56 satellites, actually more because 12 blew up when we launched them out of Russia. So I was involved in that sort of stuff. Then I got involved in software. I took some time off, did some teaching, university teaching. Then I got sort of involved in software and the startup world. I always loved software too. All through my career, I was fascinated by software and its power. That's sort of my backstory
Yeah.
in a few minutes.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Absolutely fascinating. So IQ, the company that you started, you kind of started it as a lark, but this ended up as a decades-long journey. So what was that
Yeah,
original spark where, you're working for the federal government and you decide to switch and just do something for yourself? And how did this
yeah.
evolve into a global telehealth company?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of steps that got there because when I started my career, I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. In fact, I
Mhm.
was working in these massive corporations or massive government organizations. Now, but within those organizations, I sort of had an entrepreneurial spirit. I would get out and try new things and they kind of like that because most of the people are an entrepreneur. They need someone who's going to come up with ideas every once in a while to try to do things. So that was good for me. So I had this entrepreneurial spirit in me. When I get to the West Coast, that's one reason why I got to the West Coast. I'm in San Francisco area. It's really different out here. So
Mhm.
there's a support structure for that. There's an attitude like, yeah, you want to build something like you want to build a supercomputer. Oh, you want to build an AI agent and attempt to beat human intelligence? Yeah, you can get away with that kind of stuff out here and get funding to do it. So I,
Yeah.
I was very much attracted to that type of mentality. So that entrepreneurial spirit was fostered by living out here. And then I happened to marry someone who was a pure entrepreneur, and she developed her own biotech company. And I saw the way that sort of worked. And I said, yeah, maybe I can kind of do the same thing. So that's how I got into the entrepreneurial thing.
Yeah.
The IQ story is like this. A friend of mine, through my wife, I met the guy around 2010 something. And he was the founder of the largest online eyeglass company at that time called Zenni Optical. His name was Tibor Lakse. He was really a great man, brilliant, very good guy. He too was a physics guy, and he loved to talk to me because actually I knew a little more physics than he did. He would want to talk about cosmology, not cosmetology, but yeah,
Yeah.
what's going on in space and what's happening with artificial intelligence and climate change and all of this stuff that I myself kind of relish in. So we would talk, and he one day approached me and says, I sell these glasses online, and these are prescription glasses, such as I'm wearing at the moment. Why can't we do eye tests online? And this had an obvious business benefit, right? Because if I can do the eye tests online, I can incorporate it into my process for selling eyeglasses. I've just now made a much more efficient business process. So
Yeah.
we thought about it. We ended up seeing this that came out of MIT. We licensed that technology. It was an idea, a good idea, and we went ahead and perfected it. But it started like I didn't know. Often you hear the story of founders saying, "Well, I had this real big problem. My dog died of rotten knees, and I decided that I'm going to do something about that, and I'm going to create prosthetic knees." And I ended up now becoming a great company. My thing was, I was curious about the technology, but I really knew nothing about it. But he said, let's get started. And we talked about this for a while. And one day at a cocktail party, we both had a little too much to drink. And I said, how hard can it be to do this? This can't be, we can make a little plastic device. We slap it on a smartphone. And he said, yeah, it can't be too hard. Well, okay, let's go form a company. So we formed a company. He was very wealthy. And I used to pass tense because he did pass away in 2021. And we started doing it. And I said, yeah, I can build something. I said, I have a little room in some building that my wife has. He says, no, 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 you're all wrong. A little room isn't going to work. Get 5,000 square feet of space to start with because you're going to need it. So this guy was thinking at a much bigger level than I was. I said, no, I can just put it together, and I have a little microscope and a
Yeah.
soldering iron. But he said, no, 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 no. So we started the adventure. We had budget. I had budget. I didn't have to go to VCs and put together the 2-minute elevator pitch deck, which I'm awful at that kind of stuff. We started it, and I got extremely lucky finding some good people. So within a couple of weeks after I hired some really smart people, and I were really, really smart people, they were fascinated by this idea as well, to be able to do an accurate vision test using only a smartphone. We went ahead, developed a prototype. Within a year, I had a product out. We won all sorts of awards. SPIE, we were nominated for, that's the Oscar of photonics. We won the Consumer Electronics Show Award for most innovative consumer product at that time. This was back around 2017, so 2 years after we formed the company.
Yeah.
And we're riding high. So that's kind of the start of the company.
Yeah, huge proof. I mean, definitely people wanted it, people needed it. Clearly, everybody's looking from the outside in thinking this is brilliant. So did it turn out to be a little bit harder than you thought it was going to be?
It's yes and no. And so there was a lot of, when you talk about medical stuff, you enter into a gray area, right? So medical, and so the first question was, are we actually creating a medical device or not? Okay, so if I can measure refraction and it's not invasive or anything like that, it's very safe. Is that really medical or not? Well, ultimately, after talking to lawyers and talking to regulators, yeah, it's kind of medical. It's not like invasive medical. So we once you enter that regime, things change because it becomes harder. You need to show safety and effectiveness. And you run into forces that want you not to succeed. In fact, this is true of any technology, from cars to ping pong balls to anything. Anytime you come out with an innovation, the current structure is going to try to avoid you from succeeding in that. And so EyeQue had to face, and still faces to some extent, those frictional forces that are keep you from growing any business. So this is a inevitable fact. I was not aware of those sorts of forces that permeate business when I started the company. Just, I was naive.
Yeah.
And so naivety is a wonderful thing in some sense, because if you're not naive, you will tend not to do things. You'll say, oh my gosh, there's so much risk. So one of the things, if you notice in corporate America, I like lawyers. In fact, I've had some very good lawyers, and some of my best friends are lawyers. However, lawyers are not risk takers, right? Because they've studied all of the things that can possibly go wrong with something. So they tend not to be the entrepreneurs. They tend not to be the people who are going to take on a risky. So, when you're naive, you tend to not see all the risks that are out there. And I would say I characterize myself sort of in that category, but quickly learned how it is. The easy part was technology to some extent. It was easy to build this thing, to get it to work.
Yeah.
That was not that hard. It was much easier than I thought it would be. But getting a product out there, that's the hard part. And so, and even today, we still struggle with that.
Right. And I think to your point of permission to fail. And I think that that's so important for science. When you look at the great physicists and when you look at the great scientists, of the past few hundred years, many of them simply had access to either money or were funded by the church. And what they didn't have, that naivety that you were talking about, they didn't have, oh man, if I fail, I'm in trouble. Like I won't eat, like I will be fired. And it was, so I think that is a huge benefit of being able to chase the technology, chase the science.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And one of the things that led to even this podcast being able to be done today is allowing people, physicists and other scientists, the time to do basic research that led to these kind of technologies. And if anything, I hope that can continue, although I see threats to basic research wherever I look. And even some of my colleagues back from MIT are concerned about the future as you get cutbacks in funding. So I know I went off topic a bit, but I just wanted to get that point across, that the benefits of doing research and being able to do things and being allowed to fail is huge. If you don't have that, you will not have innovation.
Yeah.
And so somehow our system has allowed people who are willing to and able to innovate, not be killed. And, back in the 1600s and 1500s, There are a couple of guys like Galileo and others that ran into some trouble when they postulated new theories about how the universe is put together. The church was not happy about that. But in general, people have worked through those sorts of things, and we are here today living a lot better than we have in the past.
Absolutely. And to your point, because we're living in today and because we are seeing these amazing things, even the tools that we're using right now, computers and technology, they're only possible because we let the researchers do their research. And that needs to keep.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
You've
Full
got
stop.
to allow,
Totally agree. Yeah.
yeah, got to allow innovation.
Yeah. So you just basically touched on your career spanning physics as a working scientist to satellite communications, enterprise software, and now ophthalmic telemedicine. So how did those experiences in those big systems, working for the government, launching those satellites, how did that shape how you're running the startup now?
Right, right. That's a great question. One thing is I want to emphasize is some types of training train you to be a generalist, able to solve different problems. One of the great things about physics is, again, I'm making a plug for physics, sorry. But as a physicist, you're taught to model things. You're taught to take some complicated thing and try to simplify it, try to create some analytical solution, such as a set of equations that will define something. Well, it's not just physics problems like one atom hitting another or something like how far away is a star. That kind of applies to anything. It applies to economic problems, it applies to engineering problems, that you want to create a model of something so that you can then manipulate that model through some analytical means and you can make great progress. So with that, it was always easy for me personally to jump into different fields.
Mhm.
So I can jump into nuclear weapons effects. I can jump into secure communications. I can jump into enterprise software. I even did some work in real estate, enterprise software and analytics modeling. And it's almost like they're all at some level in my mind the same.
Mhm.
And so that's that generalist. Now, I worked in large companies. Large companies have very formal structures set up. They have good support networks and all of that. And one of the things I learned in working in big companies is you need to be fairly good communicator. So communication skills are important. You need to be high integrity. You can't BS your way through things. You'll eventually that eventually will not work. You need to work hard, and you need to plan things. And I think that's one of the most important things. As part of planning, you need to be able to estimate how much something might cost, how long it may take to do. You need to become a judge of people and other things. And everybody, as their careers and as their life evolves, sort of gets better at those things. What I found is that working in these big companies, when I went to the little startup, it was easy for me to say, "Oh yeah, we need to get some HR function going. We need to get an IT function going. We need to get some good engineers." It was much easier for me to plan things out and get things working right than if I was just, say, out of high school or just out of 2 years of college, and I'm going to go and do different things. Now, a lot of great entrepreneurs have done that. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm not knocking that down. That apparently works. But for someone like me who's been in, I was already about, 40 years working in industry already to start this company, right? Was like, whoa. So that experience helped a lot in getting things working smoothly.
Yeah.
So I saved
Yeah.
money that way. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
So, do you have any advice for young tech founders? They've got this great idea, right?
Yeah.
But you want them to stay in that naive phase, the uninformed optimism phase, right? How do they push that through to
Well,
having that product bring to market?
this is a great question, and in of itself is a subject of many books and many lectures and many TED Talks and other things.
It's true.
You can't be completely naive. Now, I was able to be naive to some extent because I had a fairly good funding path. All right.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so if this thing failed, it wasn't like the end of the world for me or anything like that. Now, when you go into something, one thing I'll tell anybody is, do you really want to do it? You better really know what's ahead of you. Get ready for rejection. Get ready for extreme highs when you have some success and extreme lows when you have failure. Get ready for a world of, and this is an increasing world of litigation and regulation. Almost everything now you run into so many rules at the state level about this and that, about, I get hit by California with all sorts of things like, you have a toxic waste. I don't have any toxic waste. I mean, I'm not manufacturing in the United States. So, oh, well, you need to have a toxic waste waiver. And so, you end up getting involved. So this is a fact of being an entrepreneur and starting a company, especially, focus on technology, which is what I know. You're going to run into lots of barriers. And of course, if you really love something, you're really confident it's going to work, go do it. You'll be convincing to people. If your heart's really into something, your brain is into something, you got the willpower, you can do anything. So that's the other point I want to make is optimism.
Yeah.
You got to be optimistic about things and not only show it externally, but it truly has got to be in you that you're optimistic. One of my own personal life lessons is when I've been optimistic internally, it always ended up in a better result than when I'm pessimistic. You've heard like this old fable or whatever you call it, where, a prophecy where a scientist says, my experiment won't work. Well, if someone says that, my God, they're always right. Their experiment won't work. Because to make something work, you have to be so exact, correcting, optimizing to make something work. So you have to be optimistic to do that. You have to truly believe there'll be a good outcome, and that outcome will help. The other thing is you've got to do something. A lot of times we've all heard this before, and I think it's true, is you build something because you got a cool idea. Well, yeah, but you better cool idea better have an application so people can use it. Otherwise, you may do something really cool, like you may create something that makes wonderful holes in granite. Okay, great. You make wonderful holes in granite. Who gives a damn? You got to have something that is practical that people will use. And so that's important if you're thinking about starting a company. Make sure you got a market to do that. And even the term market is a bit abstract. Just make sure you've got people who really want to use this thing.
Absolutely.
So those are a few words I would say in that category about starting a company.
So let's talk about your own company growth. Like, what are your plans over the next year? How are we going to grow EyeQue?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. So EyeQue, we've been running with this business for about 10 years. We've been offering vision services for about 8 years, and we have a large variety of different services. To get the company up to another level, it will take a tremendous amount of expense in two regards. So, I don't go around and claim, victory. I get kudos for my persistence, for my honesty in the mission and the usefulness of the mission of the company. But to get this thing to go where EyeQue becomes a common household name. Yeah, like, did you use EyeQue today? Did you see my EyeQue? We're not there. To do that will require lots more effort because there's a lack of awareness. And that lack of awareness sort of stems a little bit from my comments before about business barriers. So people have this concept. They go to see the eye doctor, and the eye doctors are great people. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not trying to take business away from it. In fact, what I want to do is incorporate the tools that we've developed into the process. So we've set up some telemedicine type platform to do that. We can offer ways to make an optometrist or an ophthalmologist job easier. And there's an access issue. So there's a lack of that. But the problem is that people willing to pay for the service, they're just not there. There needs to be awareness. So you would have to spend many millions of dollars building up awareness and building up partnerships with the medical community. That will take money. So that's one aspect. We're looking to raise money. I myself, again, I don't fit the typical profile of the entrepreneur. So I'm really interested in the science. I'm writing some books right now focused on the eye, no pun intended, related to it's amazing learning about this stuff. I've developed these tools, but now I'm even diving further into the subject, and there's probably good things will come out of it. We've developed about 35 patents, so the company has quite a bit of an IP portfolio. which is of value. So I'm
Yeah.
looking to either, try to get the company working closely with a strategic partner, like a large eyeglass company in the business or a medical device maker who makes ophthalmic type of equipment, and getting them to become partners with us or even possibly acquiring the company. I would like to see the technology move forward, not be shelved. Now, I believe this technology is inevitable because you're talking about we can do these eye tests, accurate eye tests, at 1/10 the price of what it costs to go to an eye doctor.
Yeah.
So this will eventually be appreciated. And there's a large market out there of people who don't get eye exams and they need it. In the US, it's significant, and globally, it's even larger. So this is a business where the market is huge, but to develop the market is going to take more investment. So I'm kind of looking into these areas right now and seeing what we can do that
Yeah.
in that respect. So I think that's my answer to the question. We also
No,
want to
it's a
refine the
great answer.
technology.
Yeah.
We want to refine, I said one other thing, we want to refine the technology. So
Yeah.
usability, by the way, here's a typical device. Here's a typical smartphone. I touch the device, I look in it, I have an app, free app, and I can make these measurements, and then I can order eyeglasses. Wonderful. But we want to make the process even easier. We want to make the light even brighter. So I do want to spend more on some product development because we know that we can make this work even better. And if it works better, people will use it even more. So we are looking at all areas, product enhancement as well as market increase.
Yeah. So people listening to this podcast, people watching this podcast, who are the best people to connect with you and how should they connect with you?
Yeah, good. I love your questions, by the way.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Well, it's easy to connect with me, such as you're connected with me. Best way is through LinkedIn. You can look me up, John A. Serri, and you'll see me pop up. And I'm very responsive on LinkedIn. I will answer most requests. So what I'm looking for is a partner in the ophthalmic eyeglass space to work with us. And we're already engaged in conversations with various parties. But if you're interested in knowing more about what we're doing, just contact me and I will get you all the information you need to do that. So that's the best way. You can go to our website, EyeQue.com, and see what's out there. We have a lot of nifty tools that are in use today. We have a telemedicine network that we're setting up so what we do is we offer the ability for optical stores to give tests. And we have online ophthalmologists who can then review the data and give a prescription. So we have a process where someone at home can go through the whole thing and get an eyeglass prescription without having to go visit an eye doctor. Now, let me caveat that because there's always these important caveats. What we offer is not a full eye exam. Full eye exam is you actually want to look at the retina. We actually do look at the retina in some cases, but you're not doing a diagnosis on eye health. You're not saying you have diabetic retinopathy or anything like that. We're focused on how well you see, not trying to tell you what's wrong with your eyes or how to make them better.
Yeah.
That's important. We're just saying, if you see this way, here's how to correct your vision with eyeglasses or contact lenses. So that's a distinction that's important to make. So that's how to get in contact with me. I hope to hear from someone.
Yeah, absolutely. All of those links are going to be right below in the show notes. So if you want to find John, look right below and you can just one click, get right there. John, thank you so much. It's been absolutely a pleasure having you on the podcast. Appreciate your time and expertise.
Likewise. All right. Take care.
Hey, thank you so much.